As the Paris summit works towards ensuring that vulnerable and developing countries receive the support needed to address the issues of climate change losses and damages, Africa is said to be at the front line. It is reported that over 120 million people have been pushed into extreme poverty in just 3 years, a number rising for the first time in 40 years. And 1/3 of all developing countries and 2/3 of low-income countries are at high risk of debt distress. As such, it is believed that it would take $4 to $5 trillion for developing countries to achieve both the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and the objectives of the Paris Agreement. The growing impact of climate change has left many developing countries with no resource to combat poverty. Hence, the need to create enough fiscal space to confront these crises and build resilience for those that will come as a result. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was in attendance seeking to fight inequalities, finance the climate transition and biodiversity protection, as well as moving closer to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals agenda. To further discuss the economic benefits of Nigeria and how this will promote bilateral relations with other nations are two gentlemen that will do justice to this, but you will get to know them after this time out. I am Victoria Clinton. Welcome to Nigeria Today. Joining me in the studio is a former ambassador to Ethiopia with current accreditation to the Republic of Djibouti and the former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Bulus Lolo. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Yakiria.
And also in the studio is a regular face on the program, an economic expert, Michelle Ali. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure having you
It's
here.
a pleasure. Thank you once again.
Now, I'll start with you, Ambassador. Why is there a need for a new global financial pact?
Well, thank you, Yakiria, and your question is a good one, asking why is there a need for a new financial global pact. It has been a long-standing battle for developing countries to have voice and representation when it comes to making decisions at the international level, and even more so when it comes to finance. Cast your mind back to 2020 and COVID-19 and what we saw. Developed countries, as they are, already awash with resources, had the space to make certain decisions that developing countries did not. And this is to speak directly to the inequality when it comes to power relations at the global level. And so for developing countries, a country like Nigeria, we need to have the same space to make certain economic decisions without hurting our rating globally. And it's about equity, it is about justice. In 2002, if I may recall, there was the financing for development that took place in Monterrey, Mexico, that came out with a new package. But I think the world has observed that pact in breach rather than compliance. And so if in 2023, we're still talking about a new financial package and for developing countries to have the space to also enjoy what the developed countries have been enjoying, it is a thing that its time has really come. And I believe that what is needed the most today is a demonstrable political will to act rather than to make empty promises.
Okay, thank you. You shall support leaders at the summit. We are so anxious to meet President Tinubu. Is this a sign that his policies are already been accepted by the leaders?
The policies are not yet designed. But one thing that Nigeria always enjoys is the largest economy in Africa. And one thing that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, people are excited because he's new into the system and they want to hear what he has and they want to hear his voice in the direction for the economy. You know, when African economy is in question, Nigeria must be there. The same thing with the ECOWAS region. But more importantly, what is more important as far as this summit is concerned, financial impact, you realize that the World Bank has already rated Nigeria. 96% of internally generated revenue is going for debt servicing, that is why the United Nations General Secretary Guterres says that most Africans are in crisis of debt hangovers. That title, debt hangovers, means a lot for Africans to realize the situation they are, and also to listen on their behalf from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Now, Ambassador, how can Nigeria leverage the summit to benefit its own lot?
That's a good question. Leveraging the summit to our own advantage is a call for us to see what we can take out of it. And in my view, there has always been this goodwill that is demonstrated whenever there is a change in leadership in the country. But I think what has been lacking is our own consistency. And I'll zero this in on what we must do as a people. The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, in Paris, said Africans should not be treated as beggars. And I'll echo him to say Nigeria must not allow itself to be treated as a beggar, not on the continent and not at the international level.
Because we shouldn't be.
Yes.
Indeed, we must not be. And what then is needed is that we have to manage ourselves, our resources, our challenges in a manner that the world will respect us. Make use of what God has given us to great advantage. And once you make use of it in that manner, people will get to see that Nigeria is taking care of Nigerians. We're not doing it for the sake of others. We're not even doing it to get a praise or a pass mark externally. By our last count, we were told that the poverty level in the country was affecting 133 million. This was before the removal of subsidy. I'm sure if we were to take that count today, the number would have grown even higher. So let's do it for our own sake.
Now, the summit, as it were, is working towards addressing the issues of climate change, which has, of course, been a major concern. What are these areas that the summit will be will need to be directed to mitigate the effect on most hit countries economically?
When climate change is mentioned, and when you look at the continent of Africa, we are victim of a lot of issues relating to climate disturbances, if I may put it that way. Remember that the same Africans, based on agitations and cries for recognition, destroy facilities. And by destroying facilities, they are creating havoc to the environment. Not only that, when you check the disturbances of war, and the stress of managing our environment is also growing. Look at the Sudan crisis, look at the situation in ports, and look at the situation probably at neighborhood in Egypt. Africans have attempted in several times to check climate control, to check desertification, to include afforestation, but it is failing because there is no consistency. Like rightly pointed out by Ambassador, we just have to do it ourselves. The environment belongs to us. Climate change affects the entire globe, but the consequences is devastating. Africa has become a dumping ground of some of the toxics from the developed economies of the world. And it is a compromise by the Africans themselves. So that environment, if you don't protect it, you don't have good water, good source of drinking water. And from there, the poverty level and all the indices that graduate people to become below United Nations standard is prevalent in Africa. So therefore, for Africa to exercise their control, what are the injections that are made in most of our preparation in the whole continent as far as environment is concerned? Ministry of Environment is created But are they discharging the right responsibilities? There is energy crisis. There is nuclear crisis around the globe. But Africa remains a very disturbing region of the world where extreme care is not taken by leadership, possibly including the policies. And if you don't have good policies on climate change on ground, no matter what you go and speak at international level, it's not going to add to the values of our environment. So for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he is enjoying a lot of goodwill around the globe. For the first step he has taken, the resources, if you check the resources being contained in misappropriation or whatever, or malpractices, you realize that Africa has enough resources to look at our environment. And in checking environment, agricultural policies are first to look into, because this is, we produce what we eat, of course, yes. We increase the size of our farmlands and we destroy vegetation. This is another second point to look into. But however, our industrial stride, which is more important, like today, we have the largest refinery in the entire, single train refinery in the entire world. What provision have we make to make sure that what is coming out of that industry in polluting our environment is taken care?
It's a good one, Ambassador. Now, Ambassador, in 2021, France pledged to redirect 100 billion special drawing rights to African countries. But this is being held back by the complex procedures that we have. Now we're talking about financial pact for African countries, the accessibility of these funds. How?
Well, when we talk about special drawing rights, even by the name, they are drawing rights that countries should enjoy with IMF and the World Bank. But because of what I started out with when I talked about voice and representation, that the developing countries and particularly African countries do not really enjoy voice and representation at that level. They are not able to access. I went and I mentioned the issue of COVID-19. If we are to take just a sample of what has been spent since the Ukraine-Russia war began in February of 2022 to date, you discover that what is spent in a month is probably higher than the 100 billion special drawing rights that Africans were promised in 2021. That's one. But for me, I'll go back slightly to your last question and dramatize the problem so that we really understand it's in our neighborhood. Desertification is eating and encroaching on our land, our livelihood, and our future more dramatically than we realize. Lake Chad has lost 90% of its volume in how many years? And it's continuing to dry. Meaning if care is not taken, that belt that was once a huge lake supporting the economy, supporting livelihood, supporting the environment may disappear. And here in our country too, we are seeing the northern part of the country now sipping in southward, that the rate at which the Sahara Desert is encroaching is unimaginable. So what does that ask of us, and we require and must do as a people? We must look at our practices, we must look at our procedures, and we must look at what we do, either to increase the rate of encroachment or to adapt to the changes or also mitigate. And they speak to simple issues. The way we govern ourselves, the way we manage our diversity, the way we manage our challenges are very, very important. And that's the reason why perhaps now, when President Bola Tinubu, I saw a clip of President Macron receiving him with a warm embrace in Paris, meaning that what? The goodwill is there. You had asked, what is the response to his policies? It's too early to begin to even ask what is the response to his policies, because the fuel subsidy removal was not a new thing. He only demonstrated the will to remove it. Number two, bringing convergence between our exchange rates such that we will have a uniform exchange rate, again, is nothing new. But for me as an individual, and speaking because I'm looking at that ordinary Nigerian who has no opportunity, how does this impact on their lives? Agriculture is our #1 industry. And unless we open the space for agriculture to be practiced again in the country without let or hindrance, meaning what? There is adequate security. You should feel free to go to your farm. You would have the inputs that you need, and you also have the access to sell what you produce. Take the damage that has been done by quote unquote farmers, herders, clashes across the country. How much damage has that done? Our food belt is becoming a farming belt. Now, if you change your food belt to a farming belt, that means you are laying the foundation for a catastrophe in this country. And what we need very early in the day of this new administration are policies that will protect our people, policies that will empower them, and policies that will break the bonds, the chains that have held us for too long. And if you ask me what are they are those things that we do wrongly, the deliberate choices we make without taking into account the consequences of our actions. This is my take on that.
Thank you, Ambassador. I would take a break here, but the discussion will continue after the break. Please don't go away.
Thank you.
Of the ruling is also dependent on another aspect or another arm of government.
Nowhere in the world will allow under digital economy for banks not to be dispensing domestic currency in that economy.
What will make this one different?
We want to know what they do as occupation. All of these are attributes that our questions have been designed to investigate.
In a few days to come, you see that we are all around their own crannies and everywhere in Nigeria, telling people to cooperate.
Welcome to Nigeria Today. Welcome back. It is still Nigeria Today, and my guests are still here with me, two gentlemen. Now, you share as much as the summit is ongoing, and we are quite expecting quite a lot. Now, one of the main objectives of the summit is to promote, private sector development, investment, to woo other, investment from other countries. But then, looking at our internal economy, how ready are we for these investments?
How ready are we? We just have to look at our policies on ground. You cannot, the ambassador rightly pointed out some of the things that may rightly be applied and help the economy. We have discussed several times in this fora on monetary policies. What are your monetary policies, and what is the target of the policy, and what are the target of the fiscal policies? These are the driving force in trying to coordinate the economic activity of an economy. Nigeria cannot stand, for instance, not to join the entire digital economy by using a unification of the exchange rate. He has pointed out from a background of an average citizen, what does that mean to you, and what does that mean to the economy, and what are the prospects of that in an economy? Now, there is job of the bank to educate the entire economy. I am not of the opinion that, for instance, the pegging system, which was misused or misapplied, to be continued. Unifying it has to also deal with the speculators around the economy. When you don't check the activities of speculators, how do you develop your agricultural policies? Because now, if I am an agriculturalist, a farmer, and I want to have some input, and this input I have to import them, now there is no any importers window. I have to go to the bank, negotiate, possibly with my bank, and then how to make this import at a price that is determined by demand and supply. So these are the things that are very cogent in this economy right away. Not only that one, like I said, if you check the fiscal policies, now an economy that 96% of internally generated all efforts is being used to service debt. What are you thinking in the next 5-10 years to happen to economy? It will be shrinking. And if it is shrinking, more people will be losing job. More people will be joining poverty club. And like what Ambassador pointed out, now how stable are we as people? We need policies on land to be specified. We need policy on agriculture so that agriculture, those that are involved in that sector will know exactly where they belong. Not just anchor borrowers in name. And you apply trillions, and then trillions are not coming back again. These are challenges that concern monetary control. But possibly with the attempt by Mr. President to go into this unification at early stage and to also take away the burden to the economy, that subsidy. Now we need to understand what are we going to use with that subsidy that we removed into the economy, because every consumer is now affected. Either in the village or in the urban areas, they are all affected with price changes. Like rightly pointed out, we have seen 133 million people in the poverty club by Bureau of Statistics without removal of subsidy. Now the subsidy is removed. What is the fate of additional tariff that is coming to manufacturers? What is going to affect the general price level? You know, I have said it early this year when we discussed inflation. I told you that the forces that will push price upward are coming, and they are on ground.
So, Ambassador, earlier you said that Nigeria should not present themselves as beggars or be seen as beggars. Right. Now, what are your expectations from this summit? You know,
if anything, let me hope that the summit will serve as a marker, in the sense that we will remember that such a summit has taken place. Good. And that we were represented there at the highest level by the President of Nigeria. But when it comes to performance and talking about what needs to be done about our economy, I will bring four without going into details. The first thing we need in this country is discipline. We need consistency. Mm-hmm. We need coherence. And above all, we must remain focused in our determination. Now, with all of this, you must have a leadership that has a clear vision of what they want for the ordinary people. The cost of governance in Nigeria must be brought down by way of reforms. Never must we justify one person moving because you occupy a public office with a retinue of vehicles, man-hours wasted by way of surrounding yourself with security. That's personal security and not national security. So our practices must be seen to be such that cost to that same ordinary Nigerian in whose name we are speaking must be less, so that the benefit is maximized for them. So minimize the cost and maximize the benefit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Well, that is where we end it today on Nigeria Today. But we want to thank our guests for sharing their thoughts and their time with us. Ambassador Bulus Lolo, former ambassador to Ethiopia with concurrent accreditation to the Republic of Djibouti, and the former permanent secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's been Very informative.
Thank you very much, Ikeria. It's good to be here.
Very informative.
Thank you.
Having you on the program. You show Liu, an economic expert. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your experience.
I'm grateful.
It's
I'm
a
grateful.
pleasure
Thank
having
you,
you
sir.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Once again.
And to our
Thank you, sir.
viewers,
Thank
thank
you,
you
sir.
so
Yes,
much
sir.
for always being
Yes,
a part of this. Don't you forget, Nigeria Today airs weekdays at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch these and other episodes on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Once again, thank you for watching. I am your carrier, LinkedIn. You have a blessed weekend.